Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Now I'm going to show you how to do this. Look at this. This is a zigzag or a peak blanket. It's done in a UK double crochet, that is a USA single crochet, and the way it's done, it actually makes it look as if it's 3D and this is all sticking up. Don't worry about my curly corner. It's where I hold it when I'm crocheting. I hold it here and then I crochet. But that will flatten as my blanket gets bigger. Now the yarn that I'm using is called Baby Chunky and it's from Woolly Hippo. I have done all of this with one ball and this is what I've got left of my second ball. This is a little car seat size and I got this donated from Susan Ross, and once again Susan, thank you very much. I did send Susan a picture of this showing her what I was making with some of the yarn that she sent. Now this is completely flat. I know it looks, see, if you see it up there, it is flat. When it's down it does look 3D. It is reversible. We will turn it around and it's the same on this side. Now it's a little scrunched and that's just because of the way I've been holding it on my knee. What I'm going to explain to you about, it took me a little while to get to grips with these peaks on the blanket. I kept getting it kind of wrong, and what I've sussed out is going up here and down here in this section. I'll zoom in a little bit. So going up here on these sections, you can have as many numbered stitches as you want, as long as it's the same each side. What you have to do, this is for your stitch count. Mine is 8 and 8, that makes 16. Then you have to add 3 more stitches to that stitch count. So that's 8 and 8, 16, 17, 18, 19. So my stitch count for one full peak is 19. And then 19 for this one. 19 for this one. And where I kept going wrong before, down in the valley, you skip 2 stitches. You skip one here and one here. But up here, you increase by 2 stitches. You do 3 into this top peak. So that's 1 for the peak. You add 1 here, which adds this one back. Now you've skipped these 2. So when you increase, it gives you these ones back that you've skipped for each peak. On the end, you can have as many stitches on this end as you like. I've got 4, and then I've got my little dent in, which keeps your side. It looks as if it's much lower, but as your blanket grows, that keeps your side straight like this. It keeps your side straight. So I've got 4 stitches. I've got 1, 2, I've got 1 there. There's actually 1 there. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the sides of my blanket. You can change the width of your peak. If you do less stitches, your peak will come out a little lower. If you put more on, your peak will be higher, obviously on the sides. So I'm going to show you how to do this beautiful zigzag blanket like this. So I am going to do a stitch count of 13. So each section of my zigzag in my blanket will be 13 stitches. So don't do your chain too tight. If you can't do your chain slack, use a bigger hook to make your chain. This is a 5mm hook. You can use a size 6. You can do your chain in a bigger size hook and then go back to that one, and that'll keep your chain slack. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 13. I'm going to do another 2 sets because I'm just going to do a sample to show you how to do this. I've got my 3 sets of 13 stitches. And like I said at the beginning, you've got to add an extra 8 stitches. Add an extra 8 stitches if you're doing all your blanket in a double crochet. Add an extra 8. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So that'll give you 4 stitches at the beginning and it'll give us 4 stitches at the end, and it'll keep your blanket straight up the sides. What you're going to do is you're just going to pull that stitch a little bit. Just pull it up a little bit. So into this very first stitch, your very first stitch, you've pulled that up. So into the very first stitch, put a double crochet. So just go in, pull your yarn through and do a double crochet into your very first stitch in your chain. You're going to do 3 more. So that's 1, 2 and 3. So that gives us, that's 1, 2, sorry, and 3. So that gives you 4 stitches going right into that very first one. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now what you're going to do is you're going to skip a stitch. Skip that stitch. Do a double crochet into that one. So that's you skipped your first stitch and it's made your first little tail end that will continue up your blanket and keep your end straight. So that counts as 1 stitch. There's something else I need to show you. I've got these are stitch markers. The next thing, if you're a beginner, you need to mark the top of your peak of your blanket. So if you can see here, it's quite difficult if you're a beginner to see those 3 stitches, what one that you need to use, because you've got stitches all around here. If you put a stitch marker into the top of there, you'll always know where your increase stitch is. So I've got these. I got these on Amazon. Now they were $9.99, but there's 1,500. There's 1,500. There's loads and loads in this. There's loads and loads. If you've got a friend, what you can do is you could buy a box of these and you can share them. Now what they are, I'll get a colour that you can see. What they are is a pin. It's a safety pin. Look at this. It's called a bulb safety pin or a bulb stitch marker. As you can see, they're in the shape of a light bulb, and that's why they're called a bulb. They're nice and bright and you can see them clearly. You can see them clearly when you mark the stitches in your blanket and you just close it off. Now if you make a lot of homemade things, these are great for sticking your tags on as well. They're just safety pins. They're just fancy safety pins, but you get so many. Look at them. But what you also get, not these ones, I was using these ones and these are a little bit, see, these are a little bit difficult for me. I've got arthritis in my knuckles and my knuckles swell up. Some of them, they just stay permanently swollen. That one's just staying permanently swollen now. And these are a little bit difficult for me to get open, these ones. But these little ones are really easy because they're thinner. They're a little bit easier to open up. And because it's metal, you can just bend it and keep it open like that. And then you can just close it again. Really easy. You also get just normal pins with it. You get normal safety pins. And you get these little gold ones as well. If I can get that little bundle out. You get normal little safety pins as well. And these are pretty good for stitch markers too. If you don't have any safety pins, you can just use bright coloured thread. So I'm going to get myself, I've got pink wool, find one that's going to stand out well. We'll get these red ones. You can put different colours in. We'll get some of those because I'll see those easily with that pink. So I'll put them there. So if you want, I'll leave a little link under the video to where I got this box of stitch markers. I got them on Amazon and it's brilliant. You get them in, it's a lovely case as well that you get them in. So what I'm going to do, totally sidetracked there. So that one counts as your first stitch, and I've got my stitch markers. I've got my little stitch markers here that we're going to use on the peaks. I need 3. We'll use them on the peaks to make your first peak. We're going to do 5. That counts as your first stitch there. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now into the next stitch you're going to put 3. We're going to increase and make the top of our zigzag, the peak. We're going to make the peak. We're going to put 3 double crochets into this stitch. 3 into this stitch. That's 1 and 2. Now when you've done your second one, I want you to put a pin in, mark that stitch, put your little stitch marker in. That's the stitch we're going to be going into on the way back. We've got one more to put in there. So now we're going to do 5 double crochets down because that has made our peak. And that's your stitch marker. That's where you'll do your 3 stitches on the next row. So now we have to go down 5 stitches. So that's 1. Make sure you're going into the right one. These 3 stitches squash this stitch right here. A lot of people lose their stitch count because they don't see that. They just go straight into this one. But if you pull that over, that is your next stitch there. So we're going to go into there. Make sure that you get your 2 parts of your stitch. So that's stitch 1, then 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now you might think that because you've increased your stitches on this peak, you're going to have too many. You're not, because we're going to decrease now. We're going to skip 2 stitches, 1 and 2. Skip those 2 stitches and do a double crochet. That counts as your first stitch going up the next one. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now into the next stitch you're going to increase again. This is what we've got. We've got your little tail end, and then you've got your first peak your zig and your zag, and you've got your little valley, and we're going up the next one. So now we need to make another peak. We need to make another peak. You'll see it better as your blanket grows. So into this next stitch, you're going to put 3 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, mark that second one. I'm going to put a little stitch marker in again, in there, so I know what one to do my increases in when I come back the way. And just close that one, close my stitch in. I need to put one more in there. That's my 3. Now right beside it, remember that one kind of gets squished. So you're going to do 5 double crochets all the way down. That's 1, 2, 3. Make sure you get the 2 parts of that stitch. That's 3, 4, and 5. Now we're on a valley again. So as you can see what's happening, we'll put it down. Because we're only doing 5, it's not as peaked as the other one I've got. So you've got your zig and your zag, your zig and your zag. So we need to do another valley part. So you've got your peaks and your valleys, if you want to call it that. You've got your peak and your valley. Your valley is when you decrease stitches, and your peak is when you increase the stitches. So we're going to skip 2, 1 and 2. Skip those 2 stitches, and we're going to do 5 double crochets again. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So we're going to do our last peak. So into the next stitch we need to put 3 double crochets. So that's 1 and 2 and 3. So remember and mark your second one that you put in there. That's that middle one. It's easier for when you come back that you've got the tops of the peaks marked. That's just, don't worry about it twisting. It'll twist until you've got a couple of rows done. So now we're going to do 5 down the way. And remember you've got a stitch hidden in there. Make sure you get that one or your stitch count won't be correct. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And we should have 5 stitches left. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. My last one on the end. Skip 1 stitch and do a double crochet into the last 4 stitches. So that's 1, skip 1 stitch and do 1, 2, my third one's a little bit squashed, 3, and my last one in here is 4. So at each end you only skip 1 stitch at each end. And this is what we've got. We'll just twist it round the right way. So there we are. We've got our little, it'll straighten up. Don't worry about it looking a little squishy. It'll straighten up because it's only your foundation row. So that's you done 1 row and you've got your little markers in where your peaks are. Don't worry so much about the valleys, because when we count down, you'll be able to see when you're going to skip your 2 stitches. So what we're going to do now is, so you're going to chain 1 and turn. Now right into the bottom of where that stitch is, you're going to put your first stitch. We're going to do 4 double crochets. You'll always start with 4 and you'll always finish with 4. So that's 1, 2, 3 and 4. You're going to skip that stitch and we're going to do 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to skip that stitch and you should have 5 empty stitches before this stitch marker. So skip 1 and do 5 double crochets up. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now as you can see, when you skip that stitch, it keeps your little edge up like that, and that is what keeps your blanket straight. If you can see my little part here, it doesn't look quite so pulled up as you go higher, but it keeps your edge of your blanket straight. I'll put mine back up there. Now we're at the top of the peak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stitch marker out and just put it down there just now. We'll use it again. I'm going to put 3 into the top of this stitch. Put 3 double crochets. 1, 2. I'm going to put my stitch marker back in on that second one so I don't get it wrong. A little bit fiddly, but it is worth it. You can just use a coloured piece of yarn. So I've got 1 more to put in there. If you're a beginner, it lets you know where your increase stitch is. So we're going to work down 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So every time you go up the side and down this side, it's 5 stitches. If you do your own stitch count, you can put as many here as you like. Like I said already at the beginning, as long as you've got 3 extra stitches, the one for decreasing here, the one for increasing up here, and one for decreasing down there. You can have as many stitches as you like in this area. I've got 5. If you want more, in my other blanket, I've got 8. So in this blanket, I've got 8. Have I got that round the right way? Nope. So in my blanket, I've got 8 stitches. So I've got 8 and 8 is 16. I need 1 here is 17, 1 here is 18, and 1 is 19. So it doesn't matter how many you put here. You can change that number you can change that number if you like, as long as you add an extra 3 for your decreasing and your increasing. Once you get your head round this, it is easy. So I'm going to work 5 down this side. That's 1, that's 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now I'm going to skip the next 2 stitches, 1 and 2. Skip over those 2 stitches, then we're going to do 5 up to this point. We should have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. That'll be your 5th one. So skip 2 and do 5 double crochets. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So we're at a peak again, and we're going to put 3 double crochets into the peak, and this is what your little blanket's looking like, your little zigzag blanket. So you can take your pin out, I'm going to put 3 double crochets into this stitch. That's 1, 2 and 3. I'll pick my stitch marker back up and put it into that second stitch that we did, just to mark it again. If you can hear a noise in the background, it's my washing machine. So we're going to do 5 down the side, skip 2 and work 5 up to the top of this peak. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. We're going to skip 2, 1, 2 and do 5 going up here. Now remember, this is your first count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So we're back at the next pin. So we're doing a peak again. Once you get used to this, you might not need the markers, but they're always handy to have. So we're going to put 3 stitches in here, 1, 2 and 3, all into the same stitch. I'm going to put my marker back into the second one that we did, and we should have 5 stitches down here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So we're on a skip 1. At the end you only skip 1, and we've got 4 stitches left. Skip that 1 and do 4 double crochets. That's 1, 2, 3, and remember the one right into the very end. One right into that little bundle. That's your chain 1. You're going to chain 1 and turn, and you're just going to repeat that row over and over again. So I'll do one more row with you. Now remember, you should have 4 stitches, skip a stitch, 5 stitches up, put 3 stitches into where your top of your peak is, where this is, work down 5, you'll skip 2, work up 5, increase in the top stitch, 3 stitches into the same stitch, work down 5, skip 2, work up 5, increase in the top, put your 3 stitches in, work down 5, skip 1, the ends only get 1. If you skip 2, it'll be too high as you start to make your blanket, and this end will go further and further in. So you're only skipping 1 down here, and then you'll do your 4 double crochets. So I'll do one more row with you. So we're going to go in to the very bottom of where we did that chain 1. So that's 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now you're going to skip one and you've got 5 stitches up here. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So we're going to skip that one and put your first double crochet in here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. We'll take our pin out. You're going to put 3 double crochets into that same stitch. This is your increase. 1, 2 and 3. If you need to, you just mark your middle stitch. Mark that third one, the second one that you put in there. We're going to work down 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Skip 2, 1, 2 and work 5 up the side. So we're skipping 2, that pulls it in, makes your valley. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. We're going to put 3 into this top stitch. 1, 2 and 3. You can put your marker back in to the second one that you've done. Work 5 stitches down. Once you get the hang of this, you'll love it. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Skip 2 and do another 5 up the way. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now we're going to increase into the top of this peak. Put 3 stitches in. 1, 2 and 3. I'll put my marker back in. Now the 3 stitches that you're putting into the peak here and here, that makes up for the ones that you've decreased down here, and it keeps your stitch count correct. So as long as you put your 3 in at the peak, that will make up for the ones that you're decreasing. That's why it doesn't matter how many you choose to put here, as long as you add 3 to every section. So if you put 7 here and 7 here, if you want a bigger peak, it's 7 and 7 is 14, plus 1 here is 15, 1 here is 16, and 1 down there is 17. So each peak, your stitch count will be 17 for your foundation chain, and you'll get a bigger peak on it. If you can remember that, then you can make your peaks and your zigzag blanket as tall or as small as you like, as long as you remember your 4 here and your 4 here. So when you do your stitch count, regardless of what you put here, make sure you add 3 for each peak. Add 3 and add 3. You can put as many there as you like. So even if you want 10, if you want a big peak, you will do 10 and 10 plus 1, 2, 3 makes 23 for each section of your blanket. And once you've done your foundation chain in sets of 23, add 8. Add 8 stitches, 4 for here and 4 for here. and you should have a good stitch count. You can do it 4. You can make this really small like this. So your stitch count would be 4 plus 4 is 8, plus 1, 2, 3 is 11. So you can do a stitch count of 11 and then add 8 on to the end of your foundation chain. That is how you work out the stitch count for each of your peaks. And when you start on an up, you've got to finish on a down. Don't finish on an up or you'll have a strange looking blanket. Your blanket will look like that. It will just stop dead there. So make sure you do it in sections like I've shown you. So we're going to go down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Skip 1. Now remember, the one you're skipping, you've already added a stitch up here for your next row to cover that. So when you're decreasing here, you've added the stitches up here already. So we're going to skip 1 and do 4 double crochet. 1, 2, 3, and 1 into there is 4. Chain 1 and turn. So what I'm going to do with my little sample is I'm going to do a few more rows and I'll come back and show you what it looks like. So this is what my little sample looks like. Now you can do as many sets of those 13 stitches as you want, or you can adjust it if you want. The more you've got in between here, don't worry about it looking a little strange here. It's just because this is the edge of your blanket. If you do more sets, then your blanket will be much bigger and you'll have a lot more zigs and zags in it. But remember what I said about the stitch count. If you want to adjust the stitch count, you adjust it here and the amount of stitches that you've got here. So if you want to put 7 here and make it a bigger peak, you've got 7 and 7 is 14 plus 3. You must do the plus 3 regardless of the amount of stitches that you want to put in your peak. You've got to do your plus 3 to get your stitch count, to get it correct, no matter how many you've got. You can do this in any yarn and any colour combinations. You can use self-colouring. You can use something like this. Look at that. That is beautiful. This is called Nested Blue and it's a Karen cotton cake. You can use acrylic yarn. You can use cotton yarn. You can use chunky. You can use 2-ply, whatever you want. You can use the hook size that tells you for the packet, or you can just be brave and use a bigger hook. The bigger the hook, I'm going to show you is, this was done with a 5mm hook and it's quite sturdy. It's quite sturdy. This was done with a 6.5 and it's a lot more loose. It's a lot more loose. It is a compact, what I call a compact stitch. It means it's quite a solid stitch. So the bigger the hook you use, then the softer it's going to be, because a double crochet is quite a compact stitch. So this would be totally different if I used a 6.5. It would be so much softer and more pliable. But I just wanted to show you the different textures you get as well from just changing a hook size. I mean, a smaller hook gives you smaller, more dense, compact stitches, and a bigger hook will give you much more loose, stitches. It's so much more loose and not flimsy, but softish, and it flows. It flows better when your stitches are bigger. But give this a try. Give this zigzag blanket a try. If you start off with the 13 stitch count and follow along with me, please subscribe to my channel. Please just click on that subscribe button. Help me to get up to 200,000 subscribers. I'm up to 160 at the moment. So the more subscribers I've got, the more people usually watch a channel. Now, my last video, the amount of people that watched it that are not subscribers was unbelievable. If everybody subscribed to my channel who watches one of my videos, I will be in the top. I'll be famous. I'll be famous. So click on the subscribe button, and if you click on that bell icon as well, then you'll be notified by YouTube when I put up another tutorial. So give this a try. I love it. I am so happy that I'm managing to do this zigzag pattern when I could never do it before, but kind of taught myself, and I hope you like it. So until the next time, happy crafting, and I'll see you all again soon. Goodbye.